So, a few days ago, a Tesla drove straight through the wall of a house in Texas and killed a 76-year-old woman standing inside her own house. And the driver who survived the crash told investigators that the car was on autopilot. So, of course, everyone immediately jumps to the same question whether Tesla failed. And I think that's the wrong question, and I'm going to show you exactly why. Because I'm an automotive safety manager, and these are the kind of failures that interest me. Because when I read a story like this, more than the headline, I'm interested in understanding the nuances and the systems sitting underneath these vehicles. So, from the story, the detail I really want to focus on is when the driver says the car was on autopilot, and this means something. And one more piece of background is all of this is happening when the US safety regulator, NHTSA, already has an open investigation into Tesla's FSD software, and it covers close to 3 million vehicles. That investigation has reached a stage called engineering analysis, which is usually the very last step before a recall. And you also have to note that Tesla themselves calls their FSD a level 2 system. I'm going to talk about different levels later, but it essentially means that the driver has to stay fully attentive, and they have clearly mentioned this in their website. Do I still need to pay attention? Yes. And clearly, it seems like Tesla has got almost everything right. But the problem is with the name, right? Because you have this big, beautiful word, full self driving, because it gives hope. And then in this small bracket, you have this little word called supervised. But if you think about it, that word supervised carries almost all the weight because it's the most important of all, because it covers pretty much everything that the software has to say about legally. And I mean, you could argue that this is like a marketing term, right? It's a marketing term. But what you have to understand is supervised is basically the law. And supervised means the car can steer, it can brake, it can do everything. But in the end, you, the human, are still every single second 100% the legal driver. So when we ask the question who was responsible, although you have a full self-driving car technically and legally, it's you who are driving it constantly. So now to really get why that one word matters so much, you need to understand how the automotive industry rates self-driving on a scale. Basically, you have 6 levels, starting from level 0 till level 5. Level 0 is where you do everything. It's a basic car with no driving help at all, except some basic features like AB, blind spot warning, and so on. Level 1 is where the car helps you with one thing. As you can see, it can either provide steering or brake or acceleration like lane centering or ACC, or is the important word here. And level 2, now the car can control two different variables like steering and braking. For example, you have lane centering and ACC at the same time. From this blue color, what I want you to focus is the word you are driving. Basically, you are held responsible legally no matter how the control was with the car. In the end, you are supervising it. And then you enter level 3. Level 3 is where the car can actually drive itself, but only in a certain condition. Level 4 is where there is no human intervention required in a set area. Basically, Waymo is a level 4 car, and level 5 is where the car drives itself, any condition, no limits, and you have to notice that level 5 doesn't exist yet. And here, legally, you are not driving, depending upon different levels. So, right now, the question is where does Tesla actually sit on the scale? And clearly, it is level 2, as I mentioned before, and it is also written on their website. And as far as I know, Mercedes system called Drive Pilot is the only system that is level 3 which can be bought in US right now, because with Mercedes Drive Pilot, the moment you switch it on, Mercedes takes the liability entirely in legal terms. It takes the legal responsibility. If something goes wrong, it is Mercedes who takes the blame. And that is the complete opposite of what Tesla says about its own system right now. But as I said, level 3 system works on a particular condition, a set of conditions in a very small box, and that box is called ODD, operational design domain, ODD is simply the exact set of conditions the car maker says the system is allowed to work in. And for Mercedes, that box is quite small. It works at 40 miles per hour or less. Only, only a specific area of the map can be covered by Drive Pilot, and it is clearly shown here. So these are some ODD criteria within which Mercedes has the legal responsibility to make sure the system works fine and as expected. So the moment you step out of these conditions, the responsibility is straight back at you. So now, if you go back to that crash incident, a residential street at 8 o'clock in the night, so that is that is outside every single ODD that exists in any car you can buy today. Even if this had the most advanced self-driving system on the market, it would have it would not have been driving on that street in the first place, because it would have handed the control back to the human being long before, which means legally the responsibility was on the driver the entire time, like before the crash, during the crash, and all of it. But as always, there are nuances, and let me run through three realistic scenarios with you that I think might have happened. Scenario one is where, as mentioned, the driver is fully responsible because the system wouldn't have been activated. And scenario two, the system was on, it was doing exactly what a level 2 system is designed to do, and handing over the control back to the human being. But probably the driver stopped paying attention, or he got too comfortable, but still legally it is his responsibility. And then you have scenario 3, which is the most interesting one. Let's imagine the system was on. The problem wasn't only that the driver looked away, it's that the car maker fell short too. Maybe the system failed in a way that is it simply shouldn't have. Maybe its warnings were too weak to catch the driver who would stop paying attention. Or even maybe it was sold and named in a way that made the driver trust it a bit more than they ever should have. In that case, the driver is looking at being the main responsible, but now a new door opens. It's called product liability, and it means the car maker itself can be held responsible for a share of it if the system or the way it was sold helped cause that crash. And this has happened before, because there's a case that is almost exactly the same crash. It's called the Benavides versus Tesla. A Tesla on autopilot and a distracted driver. The car accelerates through an intersection and it kills a young woman who was standing outside her car. And in 2025, a jury looked at all of it and they split the responsibility. 67% was on the driver and 33% was on Tesla. I don't exactly know how they arrived at those numbers, but it was the first time ever that a jury found Tesla's autopilot was actually defective. And a huge part of that case was about how the system had been marketed. So, in the end, all of this reminds me of Madeline Ellish, a researcher who studied those half automated systems where a human is technically in control, but the computer is really the one doing the work. According to her, the human sitting in one of these systems has quietly become a moral crumple zone. Moral crumple zone. In a car, the crumple zone is in the front exists to absorb the impact of an accident. Similarly, the person inside one of these automated vehicles isn't really there to drive anymore, they are there to absorb the blame. And weirdly enough, that word supervised in front of FSD acts like a crumple zone too. If everything works well, then FSD takes the stage, and if something goes wrong, then the word supervised come into picture and the human takes the blame. Because for a very long time, people have agreed on one simple idea about blame. You can actually truly be held responsible for something you actually had control over, and we have known for decades that if you put a human in front of a machine that almost never needs them, they will stop paying attention. That is just how the human mind works. But none of these means there are no rules, no standards the industry has to follow, because there are, but they are not perfect. Because the technology is sprinting way out ahead of the rules that are meant to keep them in check. From a technical compliance point of view, the whole framework for making these cars safe is still being figured out. But I'm in this field and I follow these experts, and I know it's just around the corner. But for now, that gap between what these cars are called and what they can actually do is still real, and it's still your responsibility to supervise.